when I go left, it'll be left on camera and right.
Okay.
Okay?
So we're gonna start it with a starter knot.
Yep. So you want?
All right, and you've already fed it under the rib and around.
Yeah, it's, if you want to, that. You can see how it just goes through the fabric, and the whole idea is to lace the two pieces of fabric together onto the rib so they'll stay on the rib, basically. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so we're going to start with a starter knot. And like I said before, you can work forward, you can work backwards, you can start in the middle and work out. It doesn't matter. There's no direction to it. And a starter knot, all a starter knot is a square knot with a half hitch on either side to lock it. So the square knot is just, in this case, it's right over left and then left over right and under and through. But when you're lacing fabric, it's even simpler than that, because what it's going to be short over long, under and through, and then short over long, under and through, and that's a square knot. Then we're going to lock it with a half hitch on either side, and there's faster ways to do this. You can sort of set up your half hitches as you're doing it, but just so that there's no mistake in what we're doing here, you can see it. This is a half hitch on this side, and now we're kind of done with that. And now with our needle, and I'm going to cheat here a little bit and take, I'm not going to cheat, just take it off the needle. No, I'm going to cheat, it'll be faster. So, and we're going to make a half hitch on the other side of our square knot. And if you have to, if you're in a place where you need just one lace, you know, you come to the end of your cord and you're out of cord, but you've still got one lace left to do. There, that's a square knot with a half hitch on either side. That's a standalone stitch right there. So you can use that as a single individual stitch, because this is our hidden. And sometimes when you make the holes too small, you got to enlarge them a little bit. And you also have to work, you got to do this kind of right after you punch the holes, or you got to re-punch the holes again, because they tend to close up after a little while. So now this wouldn't happen like this. There we go. I was going to say if the camera wasn't rolling, but it is. So that's our first lace in this rib. So,
And what's the material that you've strung along the, or to the rib itself on the fabric?
this is this here is it's a reinforcing tape, and this actually does have a little bit of adhesive on it. So, and it's just another piece of fabric to lay down here between your holes, just to give some local reinforcement where you're going to lace it. If you didn't reinforce it, you could actually pull the cord. The fabric itself isn't particularly strong individually, so you could actually pull the cord through the fabric and tear the fabric. So we just use a little bit of an extra strip of fabric. In the old days when they were doing this, they would put a wider tape down, almost. It was called an anti-tear strip, and it did the same thing. But this is just a little bit more modern, simple way of doing it. So now we've done the first lace, we've gone under the fabric, we've come up the first hole. Now we're going to tie our running knot here, which is our famous modified seine knot. And this is, so we come out the fabric, run around the rib, and we come back up through the fabric. So there's two ways to tie this knot, and it's exactly the same knot, there's just two different ways to do it. Now this is the traditional way of tying it. So if this loop here in my right hand, if you can think of this as being two separate pieces, there's a dead part, which is coming, and you can kind of see it through the fabric right there, coming from our previous lace. It doesn't move. And then there's the live portion, which is connected to our needle here. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pass our needle up through the loop with the dead portion at the top of the loop. That's part of the, not secret, but that's how you tie this loop, and if you screw it up, it doesn't work. So you got the dead part around the top. Now you just hold it, now you've made yourself a V here, and there's three portions of it. This is the first one, this is the second one, and this is the third one. So, and what you do is you go under the first portion, over the second portion, turn around, go back under the second portion, and then over the third portion. And what you're trying to accomplish is this. That's all you're doing. Now, if you get that out of sequence, because you want to go under first and then over. So, and then under again and then over. If you went over and then under, you'll get a knot, but it's not the knot you're looking for. So I always remember it the way that I was taught it was UFO. So is how I remember it. It's under first and then over. So now the odds of you ever rib stitching on a UFO is probably a little remote, but never say never, right? So, or it's if you had an Uncle Fred, you know, Uncle Fred's Third Offense is another one. You know, if you had an Uncle Fred that was in trouble with the law there periodically, you might be able to remember that. But anyway, the object of the game is you go under first, then over, and then under, and then over. So we've done that. Now, this portion of the knot is actually the portion that's going around the bottom of the rib. So what we do is we pull this tight, and we pull this over, now that we've got all the slack out of it. And now our lace is tight. It's tight on the top, it's tight on the bottom, you can feel it. Now all we're gonna do is pull this one, which is attached to the needle, and take the slack out of it. And that's it. That's the traditional way of tying the modified seine knot. Now, like I said the other day when we were doing this, you can pull it this way and you'll probably get away with it, but you're pulling on the top of the rib now, particularly if you've got a truss type rib, and they're not really made for that. If you pull it over this way, you're kind of undoing what you were trying to do by pulling the knot over here, because we're running the cord up this side of the rib. If you pull it forward, you're pulling against the cord that you've got under the fabric, and if there's a little bit of slack, you can tear the fabric. If you pull it backwards, I'll guarantee you're going to tear the fabric, and you're going to have a really, really bad day when you do that. Now, that being said, everybody's done it. If you're talking to somebody doing this, they say, I've never done that. They have a very, very selective memory, because everyone's done it. And it's not the end of the world. It's going to feel like the end of the world, but it's not exactly the end of the world. But now you got to come up with a way of fixing it while you're building it, which is sort of a kind of a bit of a heartbreaking proposition. So you want to avoid that. We're just going to open up these holes a little bit. You can see how they've closed up some from when we punched these the other day. So that's the traditional way, if you will, of tying the modified seine knot. Now, there's another way, and this is actually the way that I was taught to do it. These needles are sharp, and you don't want to screw up your fabric. So, the way that I was taught to do it is a little bit different way, and there's a really good video. I used to think that I was the only person in the world that tied the knot this way, because it's how my father taught me to do it. But if you go on the EAA website, and anybody that's interested in this kind of stuff, I encourage them strongly to join the EAA, because there's a tremendous amount of resources there. This is what happens when you don't prepare properly. but there's a tremendous amount of resources on the EAA website, and there's a really good video done by an engineer by the name of Jason Goldman, I believe. And it was the first time I'd ever seen anybody tie the knot the way that I was tying it. And it's exactly the same knot. It's not a shortcut. It's just a simpler way of learning to tie it, or an alternate way of learning to tie it. And it was how I was taught years ago by my father. So what we've got here, it's the same thing to this point. We've got the loop on the right-hand side. The cord is running up the right-hand side of the rib, and here it is, except this time what we're going to do is we're going to have the solid part of the loop that you can see running under the fabric to this previous knot on the back. And the live part of our loop, which you can do this with, is on the front. What we do is, we've got that sorted out, put your finger down here on it, and then just give it a turn, half a turn clockwise, and you've made this sort of 8 out of it. Then just come up here and grab that 8. Now you take your needle and you can go through the top of that 8. So you've just got your needle running through the upper loop. Now come back here and just follow your finger. I'm doing this kind of backhanded, but just follow your finger and you go through the bottom of the loop and then the top of the loop. And then you get here now, the same thing. This is what my father used to call the bow tie. He says, check you got a bow tie. If you got a bow tie, you're in business. If you haven't got a bow tie, you've screwed it up somehow. So, and now, before you get anything tight, is the time to, sometimes once in a while you get distracted or